Welcome to The Waters Between, a podcast about connection, community, and the power of giving in the Waccamaw region of South Carolina. I'm Mike Mancuso, the President and CEO of the Waccamaw Community Foundation, and excited to be your host as we navigate philanthropy in the waters between. The name Waccamaw comes from the Waccamaw Indian people, the original stewards of this land and water. The word is believed to mean both coming and going waters, and between the waters, a reflection of the rivers and the tides that shape not only our geography, but our way of life. At the Waccamaw Community Foundation, we believe philanthropy should flow just like these waters, connecting people and places, bridging needs and resources, and sustaining our communities for generations to come. This podcast flows from that mission. In each episode, we'll dive into the stories of local nonprofits, community leaders, and everyday people who are making a difference through giving, service, and collaboration. Whether you're a donor, a volunteer, or just someone who cares about the place we call home, we invite you to join us as we explore the waters between. Welcome to the Waters Between podcast. I'm Mike Mancuso, the President and CEO of the Waccamaw Community Foundation, and I'm excited to be your host as we continue our podcast series. Today, we're going to be touching on faith and generosity, churches and nonprofits in service. And today, we're excited to have Mr. Rule Hicks with us. Rule's been a past member of our board, and appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Glad to be here, Mike.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a retired financial advisor, and I've worked some 45 years, I guess, in the community in the financial area, and have been active in different organizations. One primary being the church. As you mentioned, I was with Waccamaw Community Foundation. I've served on the board of the foundation down in Charleston, the Community Foundation, and Boy Scouts and any number of organizations. So I've had some exposure to the work that foundations do and the benefits they offer.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate all you've done for us, and Rule still serves as an advisor to our financial committee as we continue to build the assets of the foundation. So today, we really want to spend some time in and around faith and churches specifically, and the tools that a foundation have that can help our churches, specifically the organizational endowment. So I know in your past with your church, you've got a number of endowments. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you got started with that and how that works for your church.
Sure. In the early 2000s, we had a minister retire at the Methodist Church in Myrtle Beach, and in retirement, he couldn't quite throttle his activities down, and he felt led to, he was forward thinking, and he felt led to help us begin to develop designated funds to fund specific needs of the church. We, as you mentioned, we currently have 3 endowments with Waccamaw Community Foundation, and they were an offspring of this specified fund that he wanted to establish to meet certain needs. One endowment is the endowment we have parsonage, and parsonage was in an old parsonage in need of repair, so he wanted to get the pressure off of us having to fund that each year in our budget, in our annual budget. So he suggested we set up a parsonage maintenance account, and that was funded through gifts, and one thing led to another, and that began to pay for the renovations that we needed to make to that parsonage and the ongoing expenses of that year to year. The second endowment we had is a summer camp endowment. He felt the need that no child in our children's ministry program would not have the opportunity to attend summer camp. So he started this summer camp endowment fund that would take the earnings off the money and pay tuitions to needy children going to camp. And then the third one was just a general First Methodist Church endowment trust that was just used to fund just specific needs of the budget during the year. And then that one thing led to another. And as the endowments began to grow, we moved those over to the Waccamaw Community Foundation, and that your organization does manage those monies for us to help us be better stewards of that money.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think for our viewers too, I think it's important to understand that the endowment is really about protecting those initial investments, and then as that fund grows and continues to make money, you're really only pulling off what the fund earns. An endowment, fully endowed, allows a 4% spendable every year. So 4% of the average balance can be spent for those designated needs. So you always have a source of income. I think the other piece that I'm seeing with other churches is as folks are wanting to leave a legacy gift to their church, part of their will or their trust, or a 401k, or maybe a life insurance policy. They like pointing them at those endowments so that their gift lasts forever. So it will continue to help the church.
Exactly. The minister took it a step further. I said he was forward thinking, and he actually took it a step forward and visited with the number of members of the congregation and sold them on the idea of leaving some money through their will to the church. And they could leave it to the church in general, or they could leave it to one of these three endowed funds. And as you mentioned, when they leave it to the endowed funds, the principal is protected. And people like knowing that when they give money to an organization, church, Boy Scouts, YMCA, whatever, that money is held in perpetuity, that it's not spent, that it's invested for the future. And that certainly met a need for our church. And as you say, that income off of those funds are used to meet those specified intended purposes.
And as you mentioned too, it really does work well for any nonprofit organization as well. I always kind of look at it this way. The average nonprofit today is spending probably about 70% of their time just trying to keep the lights on. They're out fundraising to keep the lights on and keep things moving. And 30% of their time is spent in mission. With a well-planned endowment, as time goes on, you can literally kind of flip the switch. So that endowment is now providing 70% of your income, and you're only having to be out there 30% of the time raising funds. And I think that's important for churches as well, as congregation size grow and subside. I mean, I look at my own church right now. We've got an older population in our church membership, and so at some point or another, we may have a decline in membership before it grows again. And so having that type of an endowment to be able to supplement in those times is very important. Tell me a little bit more about those discussions that your pastor had with congregation. How did he kind of approach that with them? Is it something that they did from the pulpit, or was it small groups?
No, it was mostly on small groups, one-on-one. He was pretty much retired and out of the pulpit at the time, and he just used that as an opportunity to make people aware of specific needs. And I think sometimes when people understand that their gift is going to meet a specific need, it's more of a buy-in from their standpoint. They understand it better. Candidly, oftentimes people, there's some things they'd rather give money to, and there's some things they'd rather not. Well, we attempted to pave a parking lot at the church one time, and we had a great deal of difficulty raising money to pave and paint a parking lot, yet we didn't have any trouble raising money to fund tuition for children's summer camp or parsonage repair or things of that nature. So I think he called on people one-on-one. It was an opportunity to visit with the congregation one-on-one, and so it was more on a face-to-face type of an appeal.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'd like to add to these comments is Waccamaw is there to be a partner. A lot of times you'll start that discussion about legacy giving, and they want to ask more specific questions that the institution itself may not be able to answer. And that's where we can come in right alongside the church and have more one-on-one conversations, help guide them through that process, and then work with their attorneys and set things up properly so that everything flows easy.
And there are a number of ways to do this. You can do this by gifting to the actual organization, or you can give it through working with the foundation such as Waccamaw. I think back over the life of these three funds, and we have amended all three funds over the last 20 years to some minor extent. For instance, the money for the parsonage repair, we sold the parsonage. So we came in and amended the fund to allow us to spend those monies on maintenance on the buildings that the church owns. The summer endowment program, we had a number of bequests from estates that more than adequately funded that fund, and we found that we were generating more income off the fund than we were needing to spend on tuitions. So we amended that document to allow us to spend that money on other youth activities. So it's so important, I think, to have a relationship and realize that when you're managing something for perpetuity, that's really a long time. Mm-hmm. And you do need to have, and situations change, so you need to have the ability to adjust the account to better serve what the future needs are.
Okay. So, Rule, from your past experience as a financial advisor, I'm sure you've worked with a lot of donors as they've set up their estates. What advice do you have for folks that are thinking about leaving legacy gifts to an organization or even creating their own endowments?
Well, I think sometimes you have to go back and think of what does it mean to give money to organizations. And you go back to even the basics. You go back to the Bible when we're talking about church here. You go back to the Bible, and I think it's mentioned some 30 times in the Bible how important gifting to the church is. In fact, it's mentioned in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. There's a good verse in 2 Corinthians that says, each of you should give what you have decided in your own heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. I think we all have somewhere in our soul, in our heart, the need to help the neighbor, help our neighbors out, to spend some time helping build a Habitat for Humanity house so that will provide some shelter for a needy family. Coach a Little League baseball team. I think we all have that internal desire to help other people. And that's, I think it's important for a grantor to determine what it is that tugs at their heart. Some people, it might be helping their financial, their college, their higher education institution. Others, it might be the church, it might be Boy Scouts, it might be Red Cross, it might be the YMCA. I've always felt that's important to utilize the services of a local community foundation because of the added flexibility to tweak that account as need be. I was on a trustee on a Boy Scout board that had raised money for the maintenance of our local camp. And we had developed this trust years ago through the Boy Scouts, and there was wording in the trust document that if the local council ever disbanded, went out of business, that the monies would go back to the national organization. Well, you never think that's going to happen, but our local Boy Scouts Council decided to merge with a council in Columbia. And when they did that, there was no longer a need for this Boy Scout camp that was servicing our council here in the PD area. So I haven't checked, but I think what happened to this money is it went to Texas. It shifted from meeting a current need to going to the home office, and which sort of defeated the intent all along. Now, that was the natural flow. But through working with Waccamaw Community Foundation, we, with our 3 trusts with the First Methodist Church, we were able to amend those trusts, maintain those accounts, and make certain that they were meeting the intended need as when the trust was originally established.
Well, and you hit on a really good point for community foundations, especially is really it's all about donor intent, and an organizational endowment is an endowment that's really held for the purpose of that organization. And if that changes, we need to be able to work with the organization to make sure it can be reappointed properly. And that's something that we work a lot on all our endowments, because especially when somebody's leaving an endowment that they're no longer with us, is we try at the front end to really spend time to make sure we understand their intent. They may start off, I'm giving to the local shelter for animals. But in that document, we go a little deeper and say, if something happens and this particular organization isn't here, what would you like these funds used for? Would you like it to stay in the realm of that shelter? Maybe we find another shelter, and we kind of dig down so that we've got those instructions so that the next person sitting in my seat can look at that and go, okay, I know what they needed or wanted to do with this. And I think that's important. Part of the endowment process is making sure we're documenting as much as possible the intent for the use of the money. So that's super important. So what recommendations would you give to a local church that may be thinking about delving into endowment?
Well, I think you have to look at what your long-term needs are, and if there are circumstances, if there are missions that you feel important to have addressed in future years, and you want to make certain those are funded, sometimes it's good to develop a story, and it will enable you to, I hate the word sell, but convince your congregation that this endeavor, this mission, this project is a good one to pursue, both in the short run and the long run. I think it makes it sometimes easier to sell that concept to the grantors than it is trying to fund that process year after year after year as you develop that annual budget. As I mentioned before, sometimes it's just people can buy into and identify with more a human need than they can with a physical need, such as painting stripes on the new parking lot. So it's so important to define your objective long term and to convey that to your congregation. And I do think you can get buy-in for that. I mean, people can buy into the fact that you'll need to repair the organ at some point. And organs are often expensive instruments to repair. And, you can develop a organ maintenance or music maintenance fund that can accomplish things sometimes that you can't accomplish through the annual budgeting process.
One of the examples that I've seen a couple times as I've talked to other foundations, how many times we've seen this kind of take place. That is a large bequest lands on a church, especially. Church goes out and they're so blessed to get this endowment, or not an endowment, but a bequest. They go out and they build a new building, and they spend all the money on building the building, and then years later it's like, wait a minute, now we can't afford to maintain the building. What I've always told the folks I've been working with is, you start that as an endowment, get it running so that you have an income stream from that forever, and then you can go to your bank, borrow the money to build the building, pay the debt with the income from the endowment, and when that's done, you still have income to maintain the building in the future.
And that's sort of what we're running into now. We've got an old campus. Our newest building is 40 years old. We've been in the community 110 years or so, and we find ourselves chasing our tails in terms of answering questions: do we continue to take care of deferred maintenance items, or do we tear down the building and build a new one? And if we had the foresight years ago to do as you have described, and begin to fund more endowed programs that you can just basically live off the interest, and we just unfortunately are not there.
Yeah. Well, it's the hope of the Waccamaw Community Foundation that we can help build those resources for all of our organizations, not just the churches in the region. And that's why we've really dedicated a lot of time in creating what we've described as a no barriers approach to creating the endowment, getting the fund established with no money in at the front end, and then working directly with the organizations to kind of build the campaign about educating folks about how to use the endowment. And really what you end up doing is you're planting seeds for the future. And you just keep spreading those seeds. You may not see that return for many, many years, but ultimately you will. And it helps ensure the future of the organization. So I appreciate you spending some time with us today, Rule. Thank you for all you've done for us and for your church. And just thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today. Thank you all for being with us today. There's information at the end of the podcast. Please contact us. I'm available to sit down with any organization, including all of our churches, to discuss the opportunity of endowment and help you get started on that road. Thanks for joining us today.